But so Katie, what's really interesting to me is you have such a role in the Hartford Foundation in preserving John Hartford, your father, and his music and what's going on. But from my understanding was he was so busy in the beginning of your life, or was he super involved, and how did that kind of transpose?
So, yeah, no, that makes the whole thing very interesting. So, think about how anybody's life would go. You've just written a hit song. You've been asked to come out to California by the Smothers Brothers with your wife and young son, and you travel out there and you've been in the Midwest your whole life, and then all of a sudden you're on this huge stage in Southern California in the 60s. Anybody that would survive that. I mean, just think about it for a minute. I mean, so
And let's not pretend that your father wasn't an eccentric being before he got to Southern California in the
exactly, exactly. So, and he comes from a long line of eccentric beings in our family. I mean, you look at history. Tennessee Williams was my grandfather's first cousin.
Oh,
Okay,
wow.
my grandfather was a doctor at Barnes Hospital and taught at WashU, and he was asked by his relatives, Tennessee's family, to assess him to see if he needed to be committed. So we are no strangers to eccentricity on that side of the family. We may have ignored it for a while. We may have tried to hide it, but we are no strangers to it. So with dad, and he and mom are married. They have my brother. They drive the VW Bug out to California. He goes to work on the Smothers Brothers show, gets to know Mason Williams. They're doing all these different things. Gentle in My Mind is going nuts. And everybody wanted a piece of him, which is how that went. I mean, like I said, this is the late 60s in California, Southern California, in the height of all of this. In the middle of all this, I was born right across the street from NBC Studios in Burbank, California. Within the year, they had split up and mom was on her way to Nashville, where they had just come from. She was on her way back to Nashville. So I really wasn't a part of all of that, and I mean, that stuff's hard on families, but
Of course it is. How did your mom handle it? Did you always know, was John involved at all in the beginning, or was it up until a certain age and then there was a connection, or how did that kind of go?
he was a little bit, again, he was extremely busy. He had a lot of irons in the fire, a lot going on, and he was living in Southern California and she was back in Tennessee. And she stayed very close to my grandparents, his parents, and I had the best grandparents in the world on both sides, just absolutely the best people in the world. And I think it was very hard on mom, just like it would be on anybody. And then, he would thankfully, the music industry was in Nashville, and he would come through Nashville and he would come by and see us. Of course, he and my brother, they already had that bond. He and I didn't have that bond. And so it took a while for us just to get to know each other and to just get familiar and all of that. And he wasn't like in town the whole time. So eventually he did move back to Nashville, and, we worked on it. It just took a long time to work on that. It's funny. It probably took, teenage years were hard and it just took a long time, but it was when I was an adult, I was married, and I had kids. We kind of came, if you think about where people are in their lives, in their maturity, in their growth, in their life experiences, and the things they learn from all of that, we kind of come to these windows of like healing and acceptance and understanding and all of that. And we kind of hit a window when I was a young adult. I had my own kids, and it was a chance for him to experience what I was like as a infant and toddler, which he had not been around for much of that. And it was a chance for him to kind of redo a little bit.
Yeah.
He adored my kids. He was a great grandfather. He invested in them as
It was a
people.
second act.
It was like a second act, and it was a chance. And it was a chance for he and I to connect, in a better way. Now, I'm not a musician, so we didn't connect necessarily on that level, but we both kind of had an artistic mindset. We both kind of think in creative ways. So we had this wonderful window of time there. And, we would go over to the house for Thanksgiving. And I mean, literally, and I'm going to sound clueless when I say these things, but because I didn't grow up in his house, there's a lot of this stuff I didn't realize.
How are you supposed to?
How are you supposed to? But I mean, we would have dinner, Thanksgiving dinner with Shel Silverstein. He'd be sitting right across the table, and there's Benny Martin and, whoever happens to be coming over for Thanksgiving that week. And it's just like, okay, that here we are, and let's eat and whatever. It wasn't like, oh my gosh. It was just these are Dad's friends, and here we
Yeah.
are. He and Benny would sit in the living room and just play fiddle tunes all day long. And my husband talks about taking our daughter in her infant carrier, going over to the living room and just plopping her down and just sitting and listening. It's just, this is what we do on Thanksgiving, which people now are just.
How amazing. Yeah, like how amazing would, I mean, Shay, I don't know about your Thanksgivings, but mine have never been that entertaining, right? And if they were, it's in the opposite direction.
Yes, that is accurate.
It wasn't an issue of fame or anything like that. It was like, these were friends. They were friends. They spent time together.
Well, we've talked about this so much with other people or with other guests, like these musicians and all these people that we look up to and have this lore around, they're still people, right? And so for you, like, you got to see them as people at a dinner table, right? That then just pick and play for fun because as musicians, it's what they love to do. Maybe not all musicians, right? But some, because I mean, we all know that there are musicians that are like, hey, I just do this to pay the bills. And then there's some like your father where it literally came out of every pore at all times.
He would have done it in debt. Like, yes, it's great to pay the bills, but he would have, if he were homeless living in a cardboard box, he'd still have his fiddle there, and that would keep him sane and keep him going. I mean, like he had to. He had no choice. He had to. It was like his brain was just constantly, I'd like to say he was ADD before ADD was cool, His brain was just constantly producing and thinking and creating. And when you're around someone like that, the conversations do get a little all over the place. They're very interesting. And sometimes they're monotonous. And sometimes it's like, okay. But I don't know. It was just, it was a really interesting time. And to look back on it now and to think about, I wish I could have been more present in understanding what was happening for a lot of reasons. And I wish that window for Dad and I would have lasted longer, but the cancer took over. I mean, we were having that moment of communication and just good interaction and stuff. And then the cancer goes and screws all that up.
How long did you guys have when you had reconnected to when he started battling his cancer battle?
Well, so he had cancer for a total of 21 years.
Yeah.
Non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it went into remission.
Yep.
I want to say, so I got married, I was 23. Dad walked me down the aisle.
Oh, wow. So that's awesome. So you guys had reconnected before you guys did that. That's special.
We did. And he and my brother and my uncle played at our wedding reception. It was at his house and the sound system wasn't working. And who knows, maybe someone pulled the plug. But we didn't want to bother him by making him perform or, it's like, it's okay, Dad. Thank you for letting us have the reception here. We'll take care of everything so you don't have to worry about it. And then it's like the sound system's not working. And so, of course, he whips out his fiddle. My brother goes and grabs his mandolin. My uncle's got a guitar. And just for reference, my uncle is Jimmy Payne. They all grew up together, but he co-wrote.
Oh, yeah, just Uncle Jimmy Payne.
With Jim Glazer for Gary Puckett and Gap and a whole bunch of other country stuff. So it's like when you've got these people here and I'm not wanting to.
I don't know how I haven't read about that. And
that's news to me.
Yeah, that's definitely news to me. And like, I love your father. Like so just so that he is the reason that I got into bluegrass, not him directly. Really? I had saw a Yonder Mountain String Band show in 2000. So I was 15 years old and Jeff Austin came up and he said, hey, we're going to play a couple Hartford tunes. And he started with Holden and then it was 2 hits in the joint turned brown and he played a bunch of Hartford tunes back to back to back. And then he encored with Good Old Days. And I left that festival being like, who the fuck is Hartford? What's a Hartford tune? Like what did I just listen to? And then I went and I found, and this is before like Al Gore had just invented the internet, right? So like you're trying to like figure this out, and I got a copy of Steam Powered Aeroplane, and I listened to that thing front to back, and then it was over for me. I was like, this is it, right? Like this is it, and so I know there are so many bluegrass musicians that see your father as this foundational, like I literally call him one of my Mount Rushmores of bluegrass, right? And there's no way that he can't be. They're literally, you cannot look at this genre and not see the role that your father played. And so it's interesting to see some of these like personal stories, but then, so like you're going through him battling cancer, right? And like you're trying to just connect with him as a person. But then after that, what did it look like to preserve his memories and his music? And what was your guys' plans? Did you guys talk about that as he was kind of, cause like 21 year battle is long, right? But we also know that last stage was really hard, right? And so what was that like for you guys?
It was like driving in a tornado blind. I mean, it really, we didn't know what to do. Dad didn't really tell us what to do, at least not me, not my husband and I. And I think he would drop things here and there to people around, but there was no like set out, here's how this is going to go. I mean, there were some estate things that were settled, of course, that he had taken care of, but I had heard bits and pieces, like he wanted his home on the Cumberland to be a museum, and he wanted people to be able to access his notes and his research, and different bits and pieces I heard from different people, but there was no list of instructions. So we just, kind of the way it happened when Dad passed away, it was like being hit by a truck. You think you're ready for it, but you're never ready for it. And it just, boom. There's my brother and I mean, I was just numb for a while, just knowing how to process it. But my husband, Eric, who'd been watching, was all of this and just had a deep respect for Dad. And he's a business person, data analytics. He's a professor now, but he understands the business, or not music business, just business in general. And he just did the next thing. We were living in Texas at the time, and he just grabbed up a bunch of CDs and started filling orders because people were still placing orders on the website. And he figured out, okay, how to get these things in and how to get the people the music they wanted and how to contact the people that Dad had been working with. And he just kind of went through and pieced that stuff together, just because so many people were becoming interested in Dad's music, and companies were saying, hey, we want to do a tribute and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm just like, I can't really function on that realm at the moment. And he's just taking care of it. So
you're still trying to go through the grieving process, right?
Grieving, like, immensely. And so he's the reason this kept going. He really
is. Thank you to him.
Eric is amazing.
Thank you, amazing. Eric. We appreciate you.
Absolutely. And so it took about 7 years to settle the estate and kind of get all that stuff dealt with. And we just kind of started feeling it out, and not in any particular order, but like we knew we needed a website or the continuation of the current website, and then morphing over into something that people can access. Tony Rice called up one day and he said, hey, your dad and I and Vassar recorded an album that never got put out, and it's probably in that archive, and it should be pretty much done. Do you know where that's at? So Eric goes digging through, and he and my brother are talking, and they found it. They found the tapes, and Mark Howard had played on it. So he sends them back over to Mark Howard. There's new mastering techniques that have happened since they recorded it. And it is now Hartford, Rice, and Clements, which is on vinyl, it is on CD, and it's on the website.
It is a phenomenal album.
And it's such a cool album.
It was just sitting, right? It was just sitting. And like, I know Shay has lots of questions about the boat and some of these other things.
I'm just over here listening, yeah.
But I also, sorry, you can get to your boat. I promise you can get to your boat. But I want to get to, because, I mean, she just gets a phone call from, Tony Rice, right? And like, hey, we have this album set up. And so then, like, how was it? Because there's been archives. There's a number between 4,000 songs. You already talked about your dad being ADD before it was and kind of being all over the place. And now you have 60 some odd spiral notebooks, right? 68 spiral notebooks just filled with thoughts and doodles and tunes,
Fiddle
right?
tunes.
See,
Fiddle
this is
tunes.
kind of where I'm curious is, and I'm sure this is where Cody's going, is how the hell do you pare that down?
Yes,
How do
1,000%.
you look at that and say, okay, these are the, in whatever the number is you've decided on, did you say, like, we have a percentage we're trying to preserve, or is it just combing through and picking out the stuff that looks like, that's going to be the cream of the crop? Because I know a lot of times with artists, just because they write it down doesn't mean they necessarily wanted that to get out there. They just need to get it on paper and get it out of their head. I've heard really prolific creators tell me before, like, if I don't write it down and get it out, my head explodes. I have to do it. It's a compulsion. And I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but the creator of the Twilight Zone was like that. He just kept a voice recorder with him at all times so he could get his ideas out. So, like, how do you pick what gets published and what doesn't? What's that process look like?
Well, not being a musician, the first thing I did was grab a fiddle player.
That makes sense.
These things are going to sound like. And we stayed friends with Matt Combs and Chris Sharp and some of the guys from the string band. And I called Matt. I said, Matt, what is this? What do I do with it? And we talked about it. And he actually had more information on all these journals. Apparently, Nancy Blake knew about the journals. And Nancy is his wife's godmother. Norman and Nancy are her godparents. So, just
wow.
Minor thing.
I need a ding for all the name drops throughout this episode. Just like, bing, here's another bing.
So he brought Nancy over to the house and I showed her all the stuff. I mean, our basement, we had a finished out basement, so it was all safe, but it was full of all Dad's stuff because we'd brought it out of storage into our home. So here it is. And we called it the vortex because you go down there and you just start looking through. And then you're there for hours and it sucks you in and you kind of need counseling when you're done. So it's just a whole bunch of stuff. So Nancy comes down and she's looking through all of it and she's like, oh yeah. And she sees the fiddle journals and she said, oh yeah, these things need to be preserved. This is historical. This is important stuff. And she just kind of marked it as this is a thing. So Matt and I talked for a while. And then while we were doing donations of Dad's archive, 4 different institutions have his archive. That's how big it was. But the Center for Popular Music is one, and their director, his name is Greg Reish. We talked with him, and that's when we talked about doing the book. So Matt Combs took the journals, the 68 journals. We had them in like a mail, those corrugated plastic mail holders. Yep. We had them in there. Just, okay, Matt, here. Handed him the basket, takes it over to his house, and he just starts playing through it. So where Matt really came into it, it was towards the end of Dad's life. He was touring with the string band, but Matt did a lot of the Ed Haley transcriptions.
Okay.
For Dad.
So he had experience doing that.
He did. He had experience with it. Matt is a trained musician.
But he also had experience with your father, so he knew inside between the 2 ears of John Hartford.
He had all the stuff that we needed for this. He could sight read, he could do all the things. He knew Dad, he kind of knew the way he thought. So he just started playing through it. And what he did was he pulled out everything that he felt like had like a commercial viability to it, or like it laid well, like when you played it, like it was good to play. Some of the things, because Dad would write these tunes down, not necessarily with fiddle in hand. Sometimes it was just like, get this down and then go through and play it later. And he told Matt, he said, I've written some things that I can't even play because it was just his brain putting it down on the paper. So Matt had to kind of weed out some of the stuff that was literally impossible for the human hand to fret on a fiddle. And so he came up with that. And then we went through and, we pulled a few things out just for, cultural, like, okay, yeah, maybe this title's not great, or maybe, this might not be a thing, or maybe this sounds a little like this, or maybe these 2 tunes sound a little alike, and just some different. So we pulled some things for those reasons. So it's
some
kind of like
tuning, just some fine tuning.
Yeah, you're fine tuning. It's kind of like sifting particles, and we just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller and sifting out different things. And then there kind of came a point to laying out the book and what order is it going to be in. And so I had every tune on a index card, like a 4x6 card. And I was literally just physically laying them out. And then we had to look at the text that we had and what fits where and what fits on what pages. And we have groupings of dates.
Like his journal entries and things like that, right? So then you're pairing the songs with, for people that don't know, the book that she's talking about is basically everything you would ever want in a John Hartford book, right? Because it has doodles, it has little drawings, it has notes, it has annotations. It really gives you insight into not just the music, but everything that kind of encompasses it around. So you're sitting here with your table and your board trying to move all this stuff.
Table, spreading all this stuff out, seeing how the pages are going to lay, how the pictures are going to lay, the titles, the dates. We decided it's basically in date order. So you can kind of see eras of like where he was at, you know, in 80, 85, you know, like this chapter covers mostly this kind of stuff. And so you can hear some themes going on there. So we're looking for story. We're looking for an overall story. We're looking for, you know, in all the research of like Greg is writing all this text and the research. And so we get all these different stories and like, how do you piece them together? And so we ended up doing the introduction at the front and then vignettes of stories that surrounded tunes that kind of worked with the tunes that were on that page. So it's like a giant collage of fiddle music and story and doodle and making the whole thing work together and working and reworking. And it was a task. It was fun, but it was a task. And it was, you know.
Was there... Shay, do you have something?
Well, do you have any idea what the total amount of time you put into it until everything was...
Goodness gracious. Well, my youngest child was in high school and needed me out of their hair. And I said, okay, we're going to do this book now. And y'all going to have to leave me alone. So it was months. It was months.
Were there any stories or lyrics or anything that you found that you were really surprised or happy to see?
There were. So I would say that at the same time we're going through the fiddle tunes, there were also file folders and boxes of papers and things like that we were still sorting through. And the poems in the front and the back of the book just showed up. As we're going through things, they just showed up. And it was just what we needed. And it was like, I'd not seen this before. Where did this come from? So I don't know, you know, I'll let you make your own assumptions about how all that happens, but it was
energy attracts, Katie. Energy attracts, and there was somebody that was pushing that to you
that fit in places that I didn't realize I was going to find them. So I just thought that there was a synergy to that. We also, when we were naming the book, we're sitting around the table, and we, you know, there's a fiddle tune book called Ryan's Mammoth Collection, and it's 1,000 fiddle tunes from back, I think it was published in the 1800s, of just standards that this Ryan had collected and put together in one book. And Dad had a few very dog-eared, ragged, cover missing copies of that. And, you know, we just said, it feels like Dad would want this to be called Hartford's Mammoth Collection. You know, but we expanded it to John Hartford's Mammoth Collection of Fiddle Tunes just for clarity for people who weren't familiar with Ryan's. And I kid you not, that evening I was upstairs in the archive and I came across a book I don't remember seeing before. And it was a red bound book where he had photocopied hundreds of these tunes and put them in a book to reference. And you know what was on the spine? It's Hartford's Mammoth Collection.
Wow.
There's a picture of that book awesome. In our book, and it's just crazy how that all happened.
And it happened after
we decided. And then there was one, so Matt found a tune called Katie Comes to Visit, and I had always wanted Dad just to write something for me and never knew that he did, and apparently he did, and we found it. And then he also wrote one the day of our wedding. It's called The Waltz of the Wedding We Have. Now, Katie Comes to Visit is in the book, but the other waltz is not in the book, but I have it framed on my wall next to our wedding picture.
Oh, wow.
So it's fun because it was like a journal of whatever he was doing at the time. And so a lot of times I can cross-reference someone's name or an activity or something, and there's a good chance there's a fiddle tune written about it. It's crazy.
And I think people don't understand the depth and all of the experiences that your father was a part of and created, right? And these songs that were created. But I know that there's something that's really special to a lot of us, which is his obsession with boats, right?
Yes.
Shay, here it comes, buddy. Here it comes.
This is
told
such
me
I love the boats. So so just a little background. I grew up in West Virginia. And in the Ohio Valley, so Huntington, West Virginia is right along in the tri-state with Kentucky, Ohio, and West Virginia right there. They all meet. And I want to say it was the West Virginia Belle, but there were a handful of these old paddle boats that would still go up and down the river. You could book them and things like that. And so that was one of those interesting things that I always loved, is that he was a steamboat captain at one point, correct? Kind of obsessed with it, and it's kind of a, in retrospective, like steam powered anything is kind of a whimsical, old timey type of thing now. And it was, what is it? It's the Julia Bell was the boat that he was obsessed with, and it's one of those.
Yes,
that's the name I know. I can't remember the other two. Rod Sterling was the Twilight Zone creator. Sorry, It just came to me. That's it. Anyway, not related, but it just popped in.
Squirrel.
What? Huh? No, seriously. So I mean, that was that something, because your connection with your father goes in different directions went in different directions over the years. Was that something you experienced personally? Like, did you go for rides on these boats? How did that? Because that, to me, that's
did you get to pull the steam whistle?
Yeah, did you get to pull the steam whistle? That's the dumb question. But yeah, I mean, it's just such an interesting, and I guess not really random, but that's just such an interesting thing to be obsessed with. So, I've got this image of your dad in my head, like Steamboat Willie on a steamboat somewhere, just playing fiddle and driving a steamboat up and down the Mississippi.
I definitely think that's what he did when he was on the boat.
That was in his younger days, correct?
Yeah, I mean, it was as long as he was able to do it.
That's awesome.
He was as obsessed with the boats as he was with the music. So they were neck and neck. The answer everybody would love to hear is, oh, yes, I have all these stories.
Yeah.
But because we're being real, the answer is no, I don't have the stories.
Yeah.
My brother has the stories. My brother would deckhand on the Julia Bell. He knew all of them, and because he was a little bit older, and so he got all those experiences. I have one experience on the boat and on the Julia Bell. It was the summer of the 82 World's Fair in Knoxville, and we went from Knoxville, Tennessee to Peoria, Illinois, and with my mom and stepdad, and we got tickets for the Julia Bell, and had something funky for dinner the night before that didn't sit well, and I got sick as a dog and spent the entire trip on the upper deck on the floor.
No,
she hates those steamboats.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the steamboat, Shay. Shut up.
No, it's not that. It's just that's what I remember.
That's her experience. Yeah. But so my question is for people that don't know, is like you had these fiddle tunes, you started to create it, you guys did a volume 1, right? Mm-hmm. And now volume 2, isn't it actually named after the boat?
The Julia Bell. It is. It is. And it's that way. So I have nothing but good thoughts about the Julia Bell. It wasn't the Julia Bell's fault. It was the Howard Johnsons we ate at the night before. But what was funny is that the crew kept calling me Jamie's little sister. It was funny. And
I got a name, guys. Come on.
But they were all great people. Like, I remember them. They were all great people, but I was like 13, But what to me, so my really cool connection with the boats was the General Jackson, because at Dad's funeral, the General Jackson did a drive-by on the river and blew the whistle, and everybody waved. And I just sat, and because of the state that I was in and just the connections that I was having with Dad at the moment, and I just sat there and watched it, and I just watched that wheel just go, and it was so slow. It wasn't in a hurry. It was just so slow. And I'm just sitting there, I thought, I get it now. Like, Dad, I get it now. I understand why you love this, because it was so peaceful and so beautiful and so slow and meandering. And it was just like, I don't know how to describe it. And boat people, if you're a boat person, you get it. And I know a lot of boat people, and it's a thing. These old boats and their history and the beauty of it. Well, so another reason why we picked Julia Bell, and here's another story of the energy and connection, is when Sharon and Megan and I were sitting at the table at Thistle Cafe in Nashville talking about this project and thinking about what are we going to name it. And I forget who came up with the name, but we kind of decided we liked the name Julia Bell. It was a feminine name. We knew we were going to do an all-female album. And then it's like, well, let's check the lyrics real quick and just make sure there's not something in there that we need to know about. And then I'm reading the lyrics and I look at the fourth verse and I get chills. And it says, the Julia Bell Swain is a women's lib boat. The first I ever knew, got girls in the pilot house, girls on deck, and a lady in the engine room. Donna, she's got her license. Cindy's learning to steer. Little Julie keeps Moon out of trouble by wandering off everywhere. And I'm like, here it is. It's like, once again, Dad is saying, you're going the right direction. Like, this is
it. All just matched. It linked up.
Matching together. And that's just kind of been, and to us, Julia Bell is not, it's feminine. It's not necessarily a specific girl or all girls. It's like Julia Bell is the river. It's the feminine nature of it all, you know, the nurturing, I don't even know how to describe it. I feel like people can kind of draw their own definitions of what Julia Bell means. It's not a chick album. It's a feminine expression of the music, of the river, of just all that goes into it. And I don't know. I love the name. I love the association with it. And I love the boat. And the boat it's a boat, you know?
Yeah, it's amazing. It's definitely very special, and like the way that things just connect, it's meant to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what's funny is Megan's story of how she met you, right? And how she was on stage and she went to go see John Hartford and didn't even like, and then she goes over to like Newgrass Revival, and then she comes back, right? And she like finds it, and then she gets on stage and she's telling this story, and then who's out in the crowd but Katie Hartford-Hogue. And you're hearing her talk about your dad like this. So like, how do we go from that to then having her on in such a capacity for this project?
Well, so actually that was one part of our friendship, but we actually met when we were working on the book. And so connection. So my friend Julie, and Kodi, this is the one that we talked about who passed away a few years ago, or a few months ago, weeks ago. Gosh, everything's...
Yeah, just a little bit ago. Yeah.
One of my best friends who I've just lost, she was having her 50th birthday party and gathered some friends. And so we all went out to dinner and I was there, and she used to work in publishing. And I said, I need somebody that can lay out a book. Do you know anybody who can offer recommendations? She said, well, my friend Alice can tell you. And Alice said, oh yeah, I've got a couple of recommendations. Here's this group here. There's Mary Sue England, and there's this other. And so she gave me this list of names, and I couldn't get the other people to call me back, but Mary Sue England called me back. And so we got together for lunch. She fell in love with the project, and I just adored her. And so it's like, okay, we're going to do this. And she said, when she came over for a meeting, she said, I've got a friend who's a fiddler. Can I bring her over with me? I said, sure, come on over. And it was Megan. And so Megan and Mary Sue have been best friends. Mary Sue and I are now really close friends. And so now, like, it's this whole thing. It's like Hartford's Mammoth Collection has created all these beautiful friendships. And Megan being a fiddler and also a really good copy editor was just a huge godsend for the book, because she could not only tell me where I needed a comma, but she could tell me where this reference wasn't working and we needed to tweak it because fiddlers are going to understand it this way. And so she was a huge part of making sure that book worked. And so after that, and of course she played on the album on a couple of tunes, and I just kind of had in mind, I said, I want to talk to Megan about this when it's time to do album 2, because I want to do an all-female album, and she'll know kind of the direction to go with it. And Megan's the one that said, hey, let's talk to Sharon. And then there you have it.
And that's all she wrote.
Wouldn't be here if I hadn't been there.
So there actually is one song that I really want to talk about with you on the album, which has got to be special and near and dear to your heart, because it's 3 generations of ladies that are singing on this very powerful song, No End in Love, right? And so that was you, your mother, and is it your daughter?
My daughter, Natalie.
Yeah. So that, how was that? And was that a plan? Did you know what you were coming into, that you wanted to do something? Because you've said multiple times in this interview alone that you're not a musician, right? So where did that come about? What was the thought process on?
Well, so the thing to remember is the whole premise of the album being, we hand the artist the book, they figure out what they want to do. But then we decided when we decided to do Julia Bell, of course, you have to do the Julia Bell track. It's like, well, now we got a vocal on the album. What do we do with that? And then there's Steam Powered Airplane is on the album. It's like, well, okay, do we do just these two? Do we balance it out? So, and because this album is about stories, it's about connections, it's about women in Dad's life, women who were inspired by him as a musician. Well, who is going to be a better mouthpiece for that than my mother? And let me tell you, my mother could have had the career. Like, honestly, she could have had the career. But when my brother and I came along, she said, I'm not going to let a nanny raise my kids. And I am forever indebted to her for that. So she gave up a lot to make sure that we had what we needed growing up, that we had that connection. But she had a honking voice. She used to tour with my uncle that I talked about. They were uncle and niece. They used to tour around Missouri when she was in high school. So when I was growing up, Mom and I used to sing together in church choir. And she was a soprano. Sometimes I could sing soprano, but usually it was a little lower. But it was there I learned how to sing next to her and listen to her and harmonize just through doing that. So when it came time to do this, I said, Mom, I want you to do a song on this album. And she decided on No End of Love. And the funny thing about it, once again, we're being real here, is Dad wrote that song for her, but she sang it for her late husband.
That's funny.
Had passed away, last year. So she sang it for him, of course, honoring Dad. But it was just kind of, and Megan's comment was, that's the messy family dynamic that I'm here for.
Of course she is. Megan, stirring the pot.
Megan's stirring the pot, always. And Mom said, well, Katie, I've always wanted you to sing with me. Would you sing with me on the song? And I hem-hawed, but I said, I will.
So she hit you with the Uno reverse card, and she's like, oh, you want me to sing? Well, now I'm going to make you sing with me.
Now you know my mother in a nutshell. She said, if I'm doing it, you're doing it. And then we decided we wanted Natalie to play guitar. It's like, okay, we paid for this Berkeley graduation. We need a guitar player on this song. Right? So my daughter Natalie played guitar, and it was just so fun being in the studio together and just getting to honor Mom and getting to record her and have something of her that we'll have forever. And getting to sing with her was really special. So I did the harmony parts on her vocal, and then Natalie did the guitar parts. And then, of course, we wanted Megan to do the fiddle because, Megan's like family. And it was real special. It was really special.
That is. And the entire album is amazing, right? And Megan spoke so much about some of the behind the scenes and like how to get there. And the best thing that she told us was about your personality. And you've already shown us, she's like, hey, all right. So once we got done with the first one, she was already on to number 2. So you've finished number 2. What are the plans for the future, Katie? Because obviously there's still, between the 2 live versions of Fiddle Tunes, you've done about a little bit less than 40, right? And there's how many in the book? 168?
176.
Good at numbers. 176. So what are your plans? What's the steps from here? I know this album literally just came out, but you'll hear her. She's like, no, that's just who Katie is. She's like already thinking and planning and moving ahead. So what can we look forward to?
I have too many ideas.
I wonder where that comes from.
Like I said, that strategic window, like if Dad and I had been in this space at the same time, we probably both would have exploded. I don't know. But there's a part of me that wishes that we could be in this space because we did different things. And it's like, oh man, I could have managed. And anyway, whatever.
He's still there, Katie. He is still there. Yeah. It is all there.
He's back here in my ear saying, oh, no, don't get that. Do that. But so, and I'll try not to take too long explaining this because, there's an explanation for everything. I can't have a direct answer for anything. But again, the whole premise is to see where it takes us. So I feel like when you're doing something creative, you have 2 choices, and maybe more, but basically 2 choices. You can either draw up a plan, a blueprint, and follow your blueprint, or you can start and then see where it takes you. And, and there's probably some combinations of that. And probably it's a little bit of both. But the way that we have done the book and both of the albums is we start with a basic, like beginning, but we're open to where it takes us. Because to me, the beauty is in seeing what comes out of it. Like if I try to micromanage something, it's going to be flat. and dull, but I want to see it organically take place. I want to see what people bring to it. I want to see what their personalities bring to it. And
that's kind of why you let them pick their own songs, right?
Exactly. And I mean, there was a little bit of coaching here and there. Sharon just did an amazing job of guiding people, like letting them flourish, but also a little bit of guidance. I mean, think about how do you mix an album where everybody's kind of done their own thing? And, it's mostly in the same studio, but there's some different things in different places. I mean, on volume one of the tracks was recorded in a hotel room, and I'm not going to tell you which one. Bet you don't know because it sounds good.
What's funny, Shay, does that sound familiar to you? Because it's funny, Katie, that you were saying this, and I had this huge smile on my face while you were saying it, is because a lot of the times with the podcast, people are be like, hey, do you have a list of questions, or do you have stuff that you want to talk to us about, or do you have a certain way that you want this to flow? And both Shay and I are like, no, we have no idea. We do our research and we try to learn about who we're talking to, but we just want to see what conversation comes up, right? And I feel like when we do it that way, it makes it more genuine, right?
Yeah.
It's not just like, okay, here's a light, here's the same 10 questions that I ask the same people all the time. It doesn't feel like organic, like you were saying, right? And so it's cool that all of this has come together with volume 2, and now like you guys are having people go out and play. Megan is talking about teaching the younger generation some of your dad's songs, right? And keeping his legacy alive, which you're already doing a phenomenal job at. However, I can't go through this interview and not ask you about the festival. And I know it's been a few years since it has stopped, but obviously the finances after COVID and things like that is wild for everyone and what was going on. Do you guys ever foresee a Hartford festival coming back, or is that in part of your plans of this mass hysteria that is the John Hartford realm?
Well, if you say mass hysteria, I'm going to go hide under a rock. I can't handle mass hysteria.
Listen, you just don't know. You're already in the middle of it, Katie. You are already in the middle of it.
No. I'm an introvert. Please don't do this.
Yes.
So let me start off by saying that we did not run the festival.
So that wasn't associated with you guys.
Well, we supported the festival. Like we would go and we would do the merch tent and talk to people, and it was wonderful. And let me just say, the people involved in that festival were just wonderful. We're still in touch with them. We're still friends with them, and just really appreciate them so much. But
that's good for you to clarify, because I thought for sure that it was a Hartford official event, and that's good marketing by them, right? That we didn't know the difference, I guess.
No, and they were great, and they really honored Dad's memory. It was begun by one of his childhood friends named John Hotsey, and John has since unfortunately passed away, but Dad and John used to hop on the bus when they were teenagers and take it to Nashville and go see the Grand Ole Opry. I mean, he had so many stories and pictures and things like that, and so John did it for quite a while, and then ended up passing it on to Tom Burkhart. And of course, number of people that it takes to do a festival like that. But I know COVID was really hard on the festival scene in general, and there were just some different decisions. And so after 10 years, the decision was made to stop doing it for a time. Whether or not they'll start it again, I don't know. But we thought they did a great job, and we were fully supportive of their doing it, but we were not part of that business.
So are you guys part of the Fiddle Tunes project, the live band that's going out and playing? Or is that also?
Well, once again, so with that one, it's a little more of we endorse it, we encourage it. Megan will say, I called her up and said, please go play these tunes, which is true. But once their band goes out, they book, they decide where to go, they do the shows. We don't travel with them. We trust them that they're the musicians, they know what they're doing, and it's their deal. So they go and they book it. So it's almost kind of like with our blessing and, maybe some encouragement, but it's their deal.
That's awesome.
Megan's done it. Megan and Sharon, Rachel Bayman, and some others.
So then the only thing not only thing, but what you're really focusing on is these live volume sessions from the book, correct? So do you have a plan for volume 3, since it's only been 3 weeks since volume 2 came out?
So it has been discussed. And so as much as I can say is that I've already talked with Matt Combs, because, Matt was there. Matt was part of the book. And so right now,
he's a huge part of it, right? By what you're explaining it, he is a very large part of this conversation.
So, and he's a phenomenal player. And so Matt and I have been talking about Volume 3. And again, when you talk about the organic nature of it, Volume 1 was recorded pre-pandemic and launched 3 days prior to the pandemic, which I do not recommend as a marketing plan. It's a terrible marketing plan. Don't do that. But it worked, and it did what it needed to do, and it paid for itself, and that was good. And so now Julia Bell is post-pandemic at a time where we really want to highlight, women players. And so there's a cultural thread that kind of runs through it as well. So we have to see where things are at when we put it out. Right now, my gut is telling me that Volume 3 will have a big impact on Volume 3. I'm not sure what that's going to look like. We're talking over some things, and I'm sure we'll have a lot more ideas, but there needs to be a community.
I can only imagine the laundry list. Megan was talking about all of the ladies that you guys had that wanted to be involved, right?
So many, like we could have picked 48 more without blinking.
Yeah.
And so many I wanted on here that we didn't get on here that I could just kills me.
And it's just special, and it shows you what your father, how he played a role in so many people's lives, right? Mm-hmm. And how he continues to play a role in people's lives. And I had told Megan earlier that, like, for us, we came from the jamgrass scene, right? Where it had really sped up. But seeing the traditional and the foundational players like your father is a good place for other people that like this genre to kind of see where it came from, right? Mm-hmm. And have their own interpretations and start listening to these songs. And if they're play these songs and play it in their own way, right? And it's continuing to share the love of the music and the energy that your father was creating and harboring, right? And now we as a community are harnessing it and riding it through our lives. And so it's special. And so if we can do anything to help promote, to tell people to go out, go download the album, save it, listen to it if you haven't. The first volume and the second volume, they're both amazing front to back. Where else can people learn to stay up to date? I know that you're very active on Instagram, right? On John Hartford Official. Where else can people go?
Okay, so we actually have 2 social media channels. We just started the second one about a week or 2 ago. And we have people helping us with social media. So it's not necessarily me. We have some great folks, Lily and Maylin, that are helping us with social media. So there's the John Hartford Official, Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. We don't do X. Just saying.
Good.
And then Hartford's Mammoth Collection, which is also Facebook, Instagram, and Threads. And the John Hartford Official really focuses in on his career, what he did when he was here, the aeroplane, all the recordings that he made, and his legacy. Hartford's Mammoth Collection is going to be a fiddle nerd space. And it's going to be talking about the fiddle tunes ad nauseum and maybe some instruction and connection to fiddlers and things like that.
More of a deep dive directly into those fiddle tunes, teaching people chord progression, highlighting different covers of those fiddle tunes, things like that.
We're going to do all kinds of stuff. You just gave me some really good ideas. So yes, we're going to do all kinds of stuff like that. And
I'm full of shitty ideas. Just ask Shay.
It is a nonstop fountain, but there's a lot of good ones in there too. So yeah, if you ever hit that, the dreaded, creative blank page, you can't just shoot Kodi a message and he'll come right back with something.
Help me out here.
Listen, hey, I would be honored to help in any way, believe me, and that is the direct truth. But so is there anything else that you want people to be aware of that they should pay attention to or look forward to? Where can they go and buy the book, right? Because I think for anyone that's listened and gotten this far in the conversation, the next thing you need to do is listen to Katie, go to wherever she's telling you, and buy this book.
Well, thank you. So obviously the primary location we would love for you to buy it is johnhartford.com. We do have a website. That is us. That is our back room at our house, and we ship it out. That's great. The book, music, anything that's off the website. It is on Amazon. If you want to go to Amazon, you can do that. It is there, and that's fine.
Support local artists, buy it directly from. We don't even need to talk about big box. Anybody can go and shop that.
People know where it's at.
Yeah, we don't need to give them choices here, okay, Katie? I can be the jerk for you. Go to johnhartford.com, buy it from there. If you buy it from anywhere else, you're doing it wrong, okay? Yeah. We need to support the people that are making it. Don't support the people that are making money off the other people who are working hard off their backs.
There you go. We
I'll
don't
be
give you
done.
any more
Sorry.
spaceships. So anyway, and then Bandcamp has volumes 1 and 2 for download. So that's a good place if you like downloads and digital. That's a good place to do that. Of course, it's on the streaming services and all of that. I would love, here's just a little call out. I would love for anybody who is learning a fiddle tune or learning one of Dad's music. We love to showcase people playing his stuff. You know, I love to see people out playing his music, and I really love to see people playing the tunes. It makes me feel good that we put something out there. And if there's any way that people are gathering in community around that, let us know. Because right now we are at a time where we need community. We need to come together around good things and create good things and put those good things back into the world. So if you're doing that, would love to know about that. And
Katie, I have another, Shay already said I'm full of these ideas, but this is something we need to do. And I'd be more than willing to partner with you on this to get this done.
Right,
there is a very popular Instagram account right now in our bluegrass community called Train Songs, right?
Okay.
Train Songs.
Choo-choo.
They have a zine that they put out. This is the old version. I have the other one upstairs.
Cool.
I think that what we need to do is create one called Hartford Songs or Hartford Tunes. And that's exactly what we can do, is because people go out to shows and they're screaming Hartford songs, right? And now when you go out and you see somebody cover, we were at Renewal Festival, Full Chord, a band from Michigan, a bluegrass band from Michigan, actually played an entire set of Hartford Tunes.
Cool.
It was an entire set. And so I definitely feel like you can get momentum by putting that out into the community. Have us scream, because I mean, Shay knows I'm screaming for Hartford Tunes at any bluegrass show that I'm going to. I hear it in the first 3 tones of that, and I'm like, oh, yes, they're playing this or they're playing that. And so I know there are other Hartford junkies like myself that would gladly do this. And I know that we talked to so many bluegrass bands that your father played a prominent role in why they love this music, that they would be honored to do things like that.
Oh, that would be fun. And we just love to show the people that are playing his music. It's a way of helping him continue on, you know, and keep going and keep his music going. So yeah, no, that'd be great. Let's talk about that offline.
Yeah, I'd love to. So if you guys didn't know, go Hartford Official, John Hartford Official. What was the secondary? Hartford's Mammoth Collection. Perfect. JohnHartford.com. Is there anywhere else that you want them to go? Obviously, you can make downloads on Bandcamp. Anywhere you can stream, you can go check out the music. If you have not listened to John Hartford, do yourself a favor and go. It doesn't matter what you start with, you will find something. Leaving corporate Kodi and then leaning into what I've become now. Tall Buildings is a song that holds near and dear to my heart, right?
How many people have quit their jobs over that song?
Hey, like, here I come, sorry. But it's right? And it creates this community. And I thank you for continuing the legacy of your father. And I am so grateful for you to take this time and chat with us, and Megan as well, because you guys are doing the Lord's work, right? And like, as bluegrass fans, we are so happy that you are spending months doing this. Yes, 1,000% thank you.
We're not worthy. That's the...
But that's exactly it. And so I thank you so much, Katie, and I look forward to giving you a big hug when I do finally get to see you in person. And I look forward to seeing how you continue to grow your father's legacy.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot. It means a lot. It helps me keep going when I'm getting really tired.
Hey, Shay calls me, he calls it toxic positivity. If you need somebody to hype you up, I'm
no matter how bad your mood is, that's the guy.
Awesome. I will take you up on that.
All right, Katie, thank you so much. And we'll see you guys next week.
Have a great day.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.